My kids refuse to visit because I live in poor neighborhood. It's actually a gated community worth millions. When my daughter Ashley said, "Mom, we're not bringing the grandkids to that trashy neighborhood anymore," I simply smiled and said, "I understand completely." By Christmas morning she was calling me in tears, begging me to forgive her. And that was just the beginning. For 2 years, I had been living what I thought was my dream retirement in Willowbrook Gardens. I downsized from the family mansion after my husband passed, choosing a cozy cottage that felt like home. What my 3 adult children didn't know was that this poor neighborhood they were so embarrassed by was actually one of the most exclusive gated communities in the state, with homes starting at $3 million. They thought they were dealing with their simple old mother, who didn't understand property values. They were about to learn that their retired real estate attorney mother had been playing chess while they were playing checkers. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. For 35 years I gave my children everything. My late husband Patrick and I built a successful law practice together. He handled corporate law while I specialized in real estate deals. We lived in Preston Hills, where every house had perfectly manicured lawns and the HOA meetings were more dramatic than soap operas. Ashley, my oldest at 38, married Brad, a pharmaceutical sales rep who drives a leased BMW and talks about crushing quotas at dinner parties. They live in a house with fake stone columns and real financial problems, though they hide it well behind designer handbags and private school tuition. My middle child, Tyler, 35, works in tech and thinks his coding job makes him smarter than everyone over 40. He's the type who explains simple concepts to people who've forgotten more than he'll ever know. My youngest, Melissa, 32, married Kyle, a wannabe social media influencer who calls himself an entrepreneur, but hasn't held a steady job in years. They live off her teacher's salary while he makes TikTok videos about hustle culture. When Patrick died 2 years ago, the big house felt like a museum. Beautiful but empty. Every room echoed with memories, but silence filled the spaces where his laughter used to live. The kids immediately started their helpful suggestions. "Mom, you should sell this place and move somewhere more manageable," Ashley said during the funeral reception, like we were discussing weekend plans instead of burying their father. Tyler jumped in eagerly. "Yeah, one of those nice senior communities. They have activities and everything. Plus, you could put the extra money away for emergencies." Melissa added her wisdom. "This house is way too big for one person. It's kind of selfish to keep it when people need affordable housing." I watched them divide up my future like I was already gone. They had it planned perfectly: sell Mom's house, park her somewhere cheap and convenient, then wait for their inheritance checks. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 3 decades writing ironclad wills and trusts. Their inheritance was already locked away in legal structures designed to teach lessons, not just hand over money. Instead of arguing, I went house hunting. That's when I found Willowbrook Gardens, hidden behind old oak trees with just a small stone sign marking the entrance. No flashy gates or security guards. It looked like any quiet neighborhood from the street. The cottage at 847 Maple Lane was perfect. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that actually had counter space, and a sunroom overlooking a private pond. The previous owner had been a federal judge's widow who designed it for comfort, not showing off. The price tag? $3.2 million. I paid cash. When I announced my move, the kids seemed relieved. Ashley actually hugged me and said, "Finally, you're being practical about your finances." None of them asked to see the new place, or even asked for the address. For 6 months, life was wonderful. I joined a book club with neighbors who included a retired ambassador, a best-selling mystery writer, and a woman who'd run 3 different charities. We had dinner parties where we discussed books and travel instead of who was buying what at Costco. But my children found every excuse not to visit. "That area makes me nervous," Ashley admitted during one of our weekly calls. "It's just not very nice." Tyler was more direct. "Mom, I drove through there. Are you sure it's safe? Some of those houses look pretty sketchy." The truth hit me like ice water. My successful, college-educated children had looked at my neighborhood, with its older homes and lack of flashy displays, and decided their mother was living in poverty. They were embarrassed. Of me. The snubs started small. Ashley stopped inviting me to family barbecues. It's easier to meet at restaurants, she explained. Tyler's kids stopped asking when Grandma was visiting. Melissa's calls became shorter and more rushed. Then came the holidays. We're doing Thanksgiving at Ashley's this year, Tyler announced like it was already decided. Her dining room is bigger. But we always alternate hosting, I said, confused. Your new place is just too small, Mom. And Brad's parents are coming. We need the space. Translation. We're too embarrassed to bring the fancy in-laws to your poor neighborhood. The final blow came 3 weeks before Christmas. I was already planning the menu and wrapping gifts for all 6 grandchildren when Ashley called with her devastating announcement. Mom, we need to talk about Christmas, Ashley said, using that fake patient voice she reserved for difficult conversations. Of course, honey. I can't wait to host again. The grandkids love opening presents in the sunroom. Well, that's what I wanted to discuss. We think it would be better if you came to us this year instead. My stomach dropped. But we always do Christmas morning at Grandma's house. It's tradition. I know, but... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Mom, we're just not comfortable bringing the children to that neighborhood anymore. What do you mean? Come on. You know what I mean. That area isn't really appropriate for family gatherings. Some of those houses are falling apart, and yesterday I saw someone working on a car in their driveway. It's not the environment we want for the kids. I was speechless. The someone was probably Dr. Harrison, a retired heart surgeon who restores vintage cars. His falling apart house was actually a custom-built masterpiece worth over $4 million. So I can't see my grandchildren on Christmas morning? Of course you can. Just come here. We have plenty of room, and it's in a much better area. After hanging up, I sat in my sunroom staring at the pond, trying to process what just happened. My children thought I was poor, not just struggling, actually living somewhere dangerous. That's when I heard Tyler's voice outside my window. He was standing by his car, talking loudly on his phone. He must have driven over after Ashley's call to check on me. No, I'm telling you, she's completely lost it, he was saying. This neighborhood is like low-income housing. Half these places need new roofs. I crept closer to listen. I know, right? Mom always acted so smart about real estate, but look where she ended up. I think grief made her make terrible decisions. We might need to look into getting power of attorney if this gets worse. My blood turned to ice. Power of attorney? They thought I was mentally incompetent because of where I lived. I grabbed my phone and hit record. The good news is she probably didn't lose too much money. These houses can't be worth more than $200K tops. When she's ready to move somewhere decent, she won't take too big a hit. For 10 more minutes, my son stood in my driveway and destroyed me to whoever was listening. He called me financially irresponsible, possibly senile, and an embarrassment to the family. When he finally drove away, I didn't cry. I got angry. My children had looked at my chosen home and decided I was a failure. They were planning to take control of my life because they couldn't imagine their mother choosing simplicity over status symbols. That's when I remembered something crucial about myself. I hadn't just practiced real estate law for 30 years. I specialized in high-value property disputes and had never lost a case. More importantly, I knew exactly how to make people who underestimated me very, very sorry. The next morning, I started building my case like I was preparing for trial. First, I pulled the public property records for every house in Willowbrook Gardens. Our 47-home community had property values ranging from $2.8 to $8.5 million. The sketchy house Tyler mentioned? A $6.2 million estate owned by a retired federal appeals court judge. I printed everything. Property values, tax assessments, HOA fees. I created a file that clearly showed my trashy neighborhood had higher average home values than any area my kids had ever lived in. Next, I researched my neighbors. Dr. Harrison, the suspicious car mechanic, had been featured in Classic Car Collector magazine for his restoration work. Margaret Walsh, whose yard Tyler called overgrown, was maintaining a certified wildlife sanctuary that had won state environmental awards. But I wasn't finished gathering ammunition. I called my friend Claire, who still worked at our old law firm. I need property records pulled, I told her. 1247 Princeton Drive, 892 Oak Ridge Lane and 445 Sunset Boulevard. Those were my children's addresses. An hour later, Claire called back laughing. Helen, your daughter Ashley's house is worth $1.2 million. But she owes $1.8 million on it. She's underwater by $600,000. There's also a second mortgage from last year. Why do you need this? My children think I'm living in poverty, I explained. Poverty? Helen, your property taxes alone are more than most people's yearly salaries. The picture was becoming crystal clear. Ashley, drowning in debt, had convinced her brothers that Mom was the one with money problems. I dug deeper. Tyler's condo was worth $800K with a $750K mortgage. Nothing wrong with that except he'd been bragging about paying cash. Melissa and Kyle were renting a townhouse for $3,200 a month while he chased social media dreams. Meanwhile, I owned my $3.2 million home outright, had $2 million in investments, and received $8,000 monthly from Patrick's pension. But my children had looked at my modest cottage and assumed I was struggling. Time to show them what struggling actually looked like. I spent the afternoon photographing my neighborhood. Not just the houses but the details they'd missed. The hand-carved mailbox posts. The designer landscaping. The fact that 3 houses had Tesla charging stations in their driveways. Then I made some phone calls. Hello. This is Helen Morrison from Willowbrook Gardens. I'd like to schedule a neighborhood association meeting for next Saturday. Yes, I have something important to discuss with everyone. My neighbors all knew my children had stopped visiting. They'd been too polite to ask why, but I could see the questions in their eyes. Time to give them answers. I also called my attorney, Tom Bradley, who'd handled my estate planning. Tom, I need to make some changes to the family trusts. Can you come by next week? Of course, Helen. Everything all right? Everything's about to be perfect. The final call was to my accountant. Nancy, I need a complete financial statement prepared. Assets, income, everything. Make it official. For tax purposes? For educational purposes. As I hung up, I realized I was actually excited for the first time in months. My children thought they were dealing with a confused old woman who'd made bad choices. They were about to learn they'd been playing checkers with a chess master. And I was 3 moves away from checkmate. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather for the neighborhood meeting. I'd spent the week preparing, and my plan was more detailed than any legal brief I'd ever written. At 10 a.m., 17 neighbors gathered in the community clubhouse. These weren't ordinary retirees. This was a room full of people who'd spent decades making important decisions and solving complex problems. Thank you all for coming, I began. I called this meeting because I need your help with a delicate family situation. I explained everything. How my children had stopped visiting because they thought the neighborhood was inappropriate. How they were planning to seek power of attorney because they believed I was mentally incompetent. Dr. Harrison spoke first. Helen, I'm sorry your children feel that way. But I have to ask, do they know where they're living? That's just it, I said. They don't know anything about property values or this community. They made assumptions based on how the houses look from the street. Margaret Walsh raised her hand. What exactly are you planning to do? I smiled. I'm going to educate them. But I need witnesses to make sure everything is legal and above board. For the next hour, we planned what I privately called Operation Reality Check. First, the neighbors agreed to document their own backgrounds and property values. Dr. Harrison would provide his medical credentials and car collection appraisals. Margaret would share her environmental awards and property tax statements. Ambassador Frank Chin would detail his diplomatic career and home value. Wait, I caught myself. I can't use Chin as per the user's instructions. Let me revise that. Ambassador Frank Wellington would detail his diplomatic career and home value. Second, we'd invite my children to a neighborhood potluck the following Saturday. They thought they were coming to humor their poor mother at a sad little gathering. They had no idea they'd be meeting some of the most accomplished people in the state. Third, I'd prepared a special presentation about property values and community resources. Nothing aggressive, just facts and figures that would speak for themselves. What they don't know, I told my neighbors, is that I've been documenting everything. Their phone calls, their assumptions, their plans to take control of my finances. Dr. Harrison chuckled. Helen, remind me never to underestimate a lawyer. Even a retired one. Especially a retired one, I corrected. We have time to be thorough. After the meeting, I made the calls. Ashley, I'd love for you and the family to come to a neighborhood potluck next Saturday. Nothing fancy, just meeting my new friends. Mom, I don't know if that's such a good idea. Please? It would mean so much to me. The neighbors have been asking to meet my children, and I've been making excuses. Guilt worked perfectly. Ashley agreed and convinced Tyler and Melissa to come too. Just promise me we won't stay long, Ashley added. And maybe we should drive separately in case we need to leave early. Of course, dear. Whatever makes you comfortable. Phase 1 was set, but I had bigger plans brewing. While researching my children's finances, I discovered some interesting information. Ashley's second mortgage wasn't for home improvements like she told everyone. The money had gone to pay off credit card debt from her shopping addiction. Tyler's cash purchase of his condo had actually been financed through a hard money lender at 18% interest because his credit score was too low for a traditional mortgage. And Melissa? She'd been lying to Kyle about her teacher's salary, claiming she made $20K less than reality to avoid pressure about him finding work. My children weren't just wrong about my financial situation, they were lying about their own. Time to bring some truth to light. I spent the rest of the week preparing documents. Property records, financial statements, and a detailed breakdown of what it actually cost to live in Willowbrook Gardens. The HOA fees alone were more than most people's rent. But the real surprise would be my announcement about their inheritance. See, I'd been planning to leave everything to my children in equal shares. The house, the investments, Patrick's life insurance, about $8 million total. But people who think their mother is mentally incompetent and financially irresponsible probably shouldn't be trusted with that kind of money. I called Tom Bradley again. I want to change the will. Instead of direct inheritance, I'm setting up a trust that requires financial education classes and community service before they can access any funds. Helen, are you sure about this? Tom, my children think I'm living in poverty because I chose a modest home in an expensive neighborhood. They need to learn the difference between wealth and showing off. And if they refuse the requirements, then the money goes to charity. All of it. As I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. My children wanted to control my life because they thought I couldn't handle my own affairs. They were about to learn what being out of control actually felt like. The potluck was in 3 days. Everything was ready. Time to show them who they'd been underestimating. Saturday arrived with picture-perfect weather. I spent the morning setting up tables in the community garden area, where the pond and carefully maintained landscaping would be clearly visible. At 2 p.m., my children arrived in Tyler's SUV, looking like they were attending a funeral instead of a family gathering. Mom, where is everyone? Ashley asked, looking around nervously. They'll be here soon, honey. Dr. Harrison is bringing his famous potato salad, and Margaret is making her award-winning apple pie. Dr. Harrison? Tyler perked up. There's a doctor who lives here? Oh yes, he's retired now, but he was a heart surgeon for 30 years. Lovely man. I watched my children exchange glances. This wasn't fitting their narrative about the poor neighborhood. At 2:15, my neighbors started arriving, and everything changed. Dr. Harrison pulled up in a pristine 1967 Mustang convertible, one of his restoration projects. He climbed out wearing a golf shirt and khakis, looking exactly like what he was, a successful professional enjoying retirement. You must be Helen's children, he said warmly. I'm Frank Harrison. Your mother talks about you constantly. Ashley's mouth fell open slightly. This wasn't the sketchy character she'd imagined. Margaret Wellington arrived next, driving a new Lexus and carrying a beautiful pie in a designer carrier. Helen. And you must be the famous family. I'm Margaret. I run the butterfly sanctuary you can see from your mother's sunroom. Tyler looked confused. Butterfly sanctuary? Oh yes, it's certified by the State Environmental Department. We get school groups touring it regularly. Your mother has been such a help with the educational programs. Then came Ambassador Wellington in his Mercedes, followed by best-selling author Patricia Stone, retired CEO Jonathan Blake, and former federal prosecutor Caroline Murphy. By 2:30, my children were standing in the middle of what was clearly a gathering of very successful, very wealthy people. "Mom," Melissa whispered. "Who are these people?" "My neighbors, dear. The ones you were worried might be drug dealers." I introduced everyone, watching my children's faces as each person shared a bit about their background. These weren't struggling retirees in a declining neighborhood. These were accomplished professionals who'd chosen this community specifically because it offered privacy and luxury without ostentation. "So Frank," Tyler said carefully, "how long have you lived here?" 8 years now. Bought the house right after I retired from the hospital. Beautiful area, great property values. My place is worth about $6 million now, though I only paid $4.5 when I moved in. Ashley choked on her lemonade. $6 million. "Oh, that's average for the neighborhood," Margaret added cheerfully. Helen got a steal on her place at 3.2. The previous owner was motivated to sell quickly. Tyler's face had gone pale. $3.2 million? "Of course, dear," I said sweetly. "Didn't I mention that when I moved?" The truth was dawning on them, but I wasn't finished yet. "Actually," I announced to the group, "since my children are here, this seems like a perfect time to share some exciting news." I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. "I've been working on a little research project about our neighborhood property values and community resources." I handed each of my children a copy of the report I'd compiled. 20 pages of property records, tax assessments, and demographic data about Willowbrook Gardens. As you can see on page 3, our community has the highest average property values in the county. Page 7 shows the education and professional backgrounds of residents. And page 12 details the appreciation rates over the past 5 years. Tyler was frantically flipping through pages. "Mom, this says your house is worth $3.8 million now." "Property values have been climbing steadily," Dr. Harrison confirmed. "Great investment, Helen." Ashley looked sick. "Mom, we need to talk privately." "Of course, dear. But first let me share the real surprise." I pulled out another folder. I also had my financial advisor prepare a complete asset statement. Since you've all been so worried about my finances, I thought you should see the actual numbers. The document clearly showed my net worth. The house, investments, pension income, and savings totaling just over $8 million. $8 million. Melissa squeaked. "Well, 8.3 to be precise. Your father and I were quite successful, as you know." My neighbors were watching this unfold with barely concealed amusement. They'd all been in situations where people underestimated them based on appearances. "But Mom," Tyler stammered, "we thought. I mean, this neighborhood looked poor." I finished gently. "Yes, I know. You told me so several times." The color drained from Ashley's face as she realized what she'd said about her mother's home. In front of these people. "Oh, and Tyler," I added, "I have a recording of our conversation from my driveway last week. Would you like to hear it?" He looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. "I think," Dr. Harrison said diplomatically, "you might want to take some time to process this information." My children mumbled awkward goodbyes and practically ran to their car. As they drove away, Margaret patted my arm. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm just getting started." That evening, my phone started ringing. First Tyler. "Mom, we need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding." Then Ashley. "Mom, I'm so sorry about what I said. I didn't realize." Finally Melissa. "Mom, can we please pretend today never happened?" I let them all go to voicemail. They'd had months to ask questions about my new home, my finances, or my well-being. Instead, they'd made assumptions and planned to take control of my life. Now they could wait. But word was spreading beyond just my children. Monday morning, Ashley called again. This time she was crying. "Mom, please pick up. Brad's parents were supposed to come for dinner tonight, and I don't know what to tell them." I answered. "Hello, Ashley." "Mom, thank God. Listen, I may have mentioned to the Kellys that you were struggling financially. They were asking about family, and I wanted to explain why you hadn't been around lately." My stomach dropped. Ashley had been spreading rumors about my financial problems to her in-laws. What exactly did you tell them? Just that you'd had to downsize significantly after Dad died and were living in a less desirable area. I was trying to get sympathy, you know? But now Brad is furious because he thinks I lied to his parents. Ashley, you did lie to his parents. But I didn't know. How was I supposed to know you were living in a mansion? By asking, or visiting, or showing the slightest interest in my life. She was quiet for a moment. Mom, what can I do to fix this? You can start by telling the truth. But the damage was spreading. Tyler called Tuesday night in a panic. Mom, my boss somehow heard that our family was dealing with financial troubles. I think Ashley said something to someone who knows someone at my company. Now there are questions about whether I need financial assistance, or if I'm reliable for the new promotion. What kind of questions? Whether I'm supporting elderly parents, whether I have good judgment about money, that kind of thing. Mom, this could really hurt my career. Tyler, your career is being hurt by lies. Lies you helped create. Melissa's call came Wednesday. Mom, you have to do something. Kyle's family is asking why we don't help you more. And when I tried to explain, it came out all wrong. Now they think we're terrible children who abandoned their poor mother. Aren't you? Mom. Melissa, you haven't visited me once since I moved. None of you have. You made assumptions about my home and my finances without asking a single question. The real crisis hit Thursday morning when Ashley called sobbing. Mom, Mrs. Peterson from the country club asked me directly about your situation. She said someone told her you were living in low-income housing, and she wanted to organize a charity drive. I sat down hard. A charity drive? She wanted to get the club ladies together to bring you groceries, and maybe some nice clothes. Mom, I was so embarrassed I didn't know what to say. Mrs. Peterson ran the most exclusive social circle in town. If she thought the Morrison family needed charity, that story would be everywhere by lunch. What did you tell her? I tried to explain that there'd been a misunderstanding, but she just looked at me like I was covering up something shameful. Mom, everyone thinks our family is either poor or lying about being poor. The irony was perfect. My children's lies about my poverty were making them look bad, not me. Friday brought the call I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Morrison, this is Janet Hayes from the Tribune. I'm writing a piece about multi-generational financial planning, and your name came up as someone who might have an interesting perspective. The local newspaper wanted to interview me. Someone had pitched my story as an example of how elderly people struggle with downsizing and financial management after losing a spouse. I'd be happy to speak with you, I said. But I think you might find my situation different than what you've heard. We scheduled the interview for Monday morning. At my house. When I told my neighbors about the article, they were delighted. Perfect opportunity to set the record straight, Dr. Harrison said. Margaret smiled. And to show what this community is really about. Ambassador Wellington offered to be interviewed as well. I'd be happy to discuss the level of financial planning required to live here. Sunday night, I got 3 panicked calls. Ashley, Mom, you can't do that interview. What if they ask about the family? Tyler, Mom, please don't talk to reporters. This could get blown out of proportion. Melissa, Mom, just tell them you changed your mind. Please. Why are you all so worried? I asked each of them. I'm just going to tell the truth. That seemed to scare them more than anything. Monday morning arrived with perfect weather for photography. The Tribune reporter brought a photographer, and my house and garden looked stunning in the morning light. The interview lasted 2 hours. I showed them the property records, explained my legal background, and gave them a tour of the neighborhood. The photographer took pictures of my sunroom, the pond, and several neighboring houses. Mrs. Morrison, the reporter said finally, this is fascinating. You're telling me that your family believed you were struggling financially because your home doesn't look expensive from the street. That's correct. And they never visited to see the property or asked about your finances directly? Never. Do you mind me asking about your net worth? I handed her my financial statement. Her eyebrows shot up. Mrs. Morrison, you're a multimillionaire living in one of the most exclusive communities in the state. Yes. And your children thought you needed financial assistance? They thought I needed a guardian. The article ran Wednesday with the headline, Millionaire Mom's Kids Think She's Poor. A Lesson in Assumptions and Family Communication. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop until I turned it off at midnight. The newspaper article changed everything. By Thursday morning, I'd received calls from 3 different television stations wanting interviews. The story had been picked up by state news outlets with headlines like, Rich Mom, Poor Assumptions, and When Adult Children Get It Wrong. But the real shock came Friday morning when Tom Bradley called. Helen, I've been contacted by an Adult Protective Services investigator. Someone filed a complaint claiming you're being financially exploited by family members. My heart stopped. What? Apparently, after the article came out, several people called to report that your children might be manipulating your finances. The investigator wants to meet with you to ensure you're not being coerced or abused. I had to laugh. My children's plan to claim I was incompetent had backfired so completely that now they were being investigated for elder abuse. When does she want to meet? Monday morning. Helen, this is serious. If there's any evidence of financial manipulation or coercion, they could face criminal charges. That afternoon, I got 3 frantic calls. Ashley was hysterical. Mom, someone from social services called me. They're asking about power of attorney and whether we've been controlling your money. I told them it was all a misunderstanding. Tyler was angry. Mom, what did you tell that reporter? Now I have investigators asking my neighbors if I've been stealing from you. Melissa was panicking. Mom, Kyle's mom saw the article and now she thinks I'm some kind of criminal who preys on elderly parents. Well, I said calmly, you did discuss taking power of attorney because you thought I was incompetent. But we never actually did anything. Only because you didn't have time yet. The weekend was quiet, but Monday brought the reckoning. Investigator Sandra Williams arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who clearly knew how to spot real problems. Mrs. Morrison, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with your adult children. For an hour, I answered everything honestly. Yes, they discussed power of attorney. Yes, they'd avoided visiting my home. Yes, they'd made assumptions about my mental capacity based on where I lived. I showed her Tyler's recorded phone call, Ashley's comments about my inappropriate neighborhood, and Melissa's complete lack of interest in my well-being. Mrs. Morrison, have any of your children asked you for money or tried to control your finances? No, but only because they thought I didn't have any money to control. She reviewed my financial statements, toured my home, and spoke with 3 neighbors who confirmed that I was sharp, independent, and well-respected in the community. Ma'am, you're clearly capable of managing your own affairs. But I am concerned about your children's behavior. In what way? Planning to seek guardianship without evidence of incapacity could be considered attempted financial exploitation, even if they never followed through. After she left, I called Tom Bradley. The investigation cleared me completely, but she's recommending that I take legal steps to protect myself. What kind of steps? A formal declaration of mental competency, updated estate planning documents, and possibly a restraining order if my children continue to harass me about my living situation. Helen, how far do you want to take this? I thought about my grandchildren, who hadn't seen their grandmother in months because their parents were embarrassed by her address. I thought about the lies they'd spread and the assumptions they'd made. Most of all, I thought about the recording of Tyler calling me senile while standing in my driveway. I want to change my will. What kind of changes? Instead of leaving everything directly to my children, I'm creating a trust that requires them to complete financial literacy courses and perform community service before accessing any inheritance. Helen, that's quite a change. Tom, my children think I'm financially incompetent, but they're all drowning in debt while I'm worth $8 million. Who really needs financial education here? He laughed. Point taken. What about the community service requirement? 100 hours each, working with organizations that help elderly people. Maybe they'll learn something about assumptions and respect. And if they refuse, then the money goes to establish a scholarship fund for first-generation college students. All of it. We spent the rest of the afternoon drafting the new documents. The trust was airtight. My children would have to prove they'd learned something about both money management and treating elderly people with dignity before they could inherit a penny. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I called each of my children. I wanted you to know that the investigation is closed. I've been declared fully competent to manage my own affairs. Mom, that's great, Ashley said carefully. So everything's back to normal? Not quite. I've made some changes to my estate planning. I explained the new trust requirements, the financial courses, the community service, the possibility that they could lose their inheritance entirely. Mom, you can't be serious, Tyler said. Tyler, you stood in my driveway and called me senile because I live in a house worth more than you'll make in 5 years. Do you think that demonstrates good judgment? But Mom, we're your children. Yes, you are. And I'm trying to make sure you become better people before you inherit the responsibility of managing serious money. Ashley was crying again. Mom, how can we fix this? By learning. By growing. By showing me that you understand the difference between wealth and wisdom. And if we don't, then you'll have given me a wonderful gift. I'll know exactly which charity will make the best use of your father's legacy. The line went quiet. You have 1 year to decide, I said. Choose wisely. 3 weeks later, they came to my house together. I watched through my sunroom window as all 3 cars pulled into my driveway. Ashley's leased BMW, Tyler's financed SUV, and Melissa's 10-year-old Honda. For the first time in months, all my children were coming to visit me at the same time. I let them knock twice before answering the door. Mom, Ashley said, we need to talk. Of course. Kumain. They filed into my living room, looking around with new eyes. The furniture they'd dismissed as making do was actually antique pieces I'd carefully selected. The art they'd ignored was from local artists whose work hung in galleries downtown. Mom, Tyler began, we've been thinking about everything that's happened. Oh, we realize we made some mistakes. I settled into my favorite chair, a mid-century modern piece that costs more than their monthly car payments combined. What kind of mistakes? Ashley jumped in. We should have visited more. We should have asked about your finances instead of assuming things. We should have trusted your judgment, Melissa added. I nodded. Those are good realizations. What else? Tyler looked uncomfortable. We shouldn't have talked about power of attorney without discussing it with you first. And they exchanged glances. And we shouldn't have been embarrassed about where you live, Ashley said quietly. Why were you embarrassed? Because. She struggled with the words. Because we thought it made us look bad that our mother was living somewhere modest. But it wasn't modest, was it? No, Tyler admitted. We were wrong about everything. I leaned forward. Tyler, what did you say about me in that phone call? His face flushed red. I said things I didn't mean. What specifically did you say? I said you might be senile, and that we might need to take control of your finances. Because I thought you'd made bad decisions about where to live. When you'd never seen my house. When I'd never seen your house, he confirmed. I turned to Ashley. What did you tell Brad's parents about me? I told them you were struggling financially and living in a rough neighborhood. Why? Because I wanted sympathy and I thought. She trailed off. You thought it made you look like a caring daughter who was dealing with a difficult situation. Yes. Instead of a daughter who couldn't be bothered to visit her mother. Ashley started crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. We all are. Sorry for what exactly? Melissa spoke up. For judging you. For making assumptions. For treating you like you couldn't take care of yourself. For lying about me to other people, Tyler added. For being embarrassed by you, Ashley whispered. I sat back and looked at my 3 adult children. They looked genuinely remorseful, but I needed to know if they understood the real lesson here. Do you know why I moved to this house? Because you liked it? Melissa guessed. I moved here. They were listening carefully now. Your father and I spent decades building wealth, not to impress people, but to have security and choices. This house represents both. It's valuable because of location and quality, not because it looks expensive. We understand that now, Tyler said. Do you? Because you all live in homes that look more expensive than they are, while going deeper into debt every month. You chose appearance over substance. Ashley looked stricken. How did you know about our finances? Because I'm a real estate attorney who specializes in property and financial planning. Did you think I wouldn't research my own children's situations before making estate planning decisions? You investigated us? I protected myself, just like I taught you to do before making any major decision. I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out 3 folders. Ashley, your house is underwater by $600,000. You've been using credit to maintain a lifestyle you can't afford. Her face went white. Tyler, your cash purchase was actually a hard money loan at 18% interest. You're paying more in interest monthly than most people's rent. He looked sick. Melissa, you've been lying to Kyle about your salary to avoid pressure about his work situation, while he spends money on equipment for social media projects that generate no income. She started crying. You were all so worried about my financial competence that you never looked at your own situations. I handed each of them their folder. These contain resources for financial counseling, debt management, and estate planning education. If you want your inheritance, you'll use them. Mom, Ashley said, we'll do whatever you want. Just please don't cut us out completely. I'm not cutting you out. I'm giving you a chance to grow up. I explained the trust requirements again. Financial education courses. Community service working with elderly people. Proof that they'd learn to value people over appearances. And there's one more condition. They waited nervously. You each owe personal apologies to my neighbors. You made assumptions about them based on appearances, just like you did with me. Tyler groaned. Mom, that's humiliating. Tyler, you called Dr. Harrison sketchy for working on cars in his driveway. The man saved lives for 30 years and restores vintage cars as art. You owe him an apology. Ashley, you called Margaret's yard overgrown when she's maintaining an award-winning environmental sanctuary. You owe her an apology. Melissa, you implied that Ambassador Wellington's house looked rough when he's maintained a historical property to museum standards. You owe him an apology. They sat in silence, processing everything. Finally, Ashley spoke. Mom, will you forgive us? Ashley, I forgave you the moment you hurt me. But forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences. We'll do everything you're asking, Tyler said. The classes, the community service, the apologies. We want to earn back your trust, Melissa added. I smiled at them. Then you'll also want to start visiting your mother regularly. Not because you have to, but because you want to know how I'm doing. Of course, they all said. Good. Dr. Harrison is having a barbecue this Saturday. You're all invited. It's a chance to meet your neighbors properly and start those apologies. As they got ready to leave, Ashley turned back. Mom, why didn't you just tell us about the house value from the beginning? Because, sweetie, you never asked. You made assumptions and acted on them without gathering facts. That's not good decision-making. And you wanted us to learn a lesson. I wanted you to learn several lessons. About assumptions, about respect, about the difference between wealth and status. Tyler paused at the door. Mom, are you proud of us for coming here today? I'm proud that you came. Whether I'm proud of you depends on what you do next. After they left, I sat in my sunroom watching the sunset over the pond. My phone rang. It was Dr. Harrison. Helen, I saw your children's cars. How did it go? They're learning, Frank. Slowly, but they're learning. And you? How are you feeling? I looked around my beautiful home, thought about my wonderful neighbors, and considered the lessons my children were about to learn. I'm feeling hopeful. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my sunroom while watching my grandchildren play by the pond. Ashley completed her financial planning course and discovered she had a real aptitude for budgeting. She's working with a debt counselor and has a 5-year plan to get her finances back on track. She's also volunteering at a senior center, teaching computer skills to elderly residents. Tyler finished both financial and humility education. His community service involved helping elderly homeowners with property maintenance, which taught him to see past appearances to underlying value. He's refinanced his condo properly, and started visiting me every Sunday for financial planning discussions. Melissa used her new knowledge to finally have an honest conversation with Kyle about money and responsibility. He's now working part-time while building his social media business with actual business planning instead of just hope. She volunteers with Meals on Wheels and has become passionate about elder rights advocacy. Most importantly, they all apologize to my neighbors. Dr. Harrison now tutors Tyler in classic car restoration. Margaret is teaching Ashley about sustainable gardening. Ambassador Wellington and Melissa have started a book club that meets monthly. The trust remains in place, but I'm confident my children will meet all requirements. They've learned to value substance over appearance, wisdom over assumptions, and family relationships over social status. Last week, Ashley brought her kids for a sleepover. As we made pancakes in my poor kitchen worth more than most people's cars, 8-year-old Emma asked, "Grandma, why didn't Mommy want to come here before?" Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, sweetheart. The important thing is that we learn from them. Tyler's boy Jake, who's 10, looked around my house and said, "This place is way cooler than our house. Can we come back next weekend?" "Anytime you want, buddy." My children learned that assumptions can blind you to reality, that respect is earned through character rather than possessions, and that family relationships require effort and honesty. But the most important lesson? Sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who end up teaching you the most valuable lessons of your life. I'm still Helen Morrison, retired attorney, loving mother, and proud grandmother. I still live in my poor neighborhood worth millions. And I'm still teaching life lessons to anyone foolish enough to underestimate a wise woman with time on her hands and justice on her mind. The grandkids are asking for lunch now. Time to show them how their rich grandma makes the world's best grilled cheese sandwiches in her $1,000,000 kitchen. Some things never change. And some things change everything.
If this story got you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit deep, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. And hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this one, share it with them. Thanks for watching.